The Plum in the Golden Base Chongzhen version of the Embroidered Portrait Chapter 94. Lure of the Grand Restaurant. And Zue of the Grand Restaurant become a prostitute. The poem says, how can one bear to return to prostitution when one's flesh and bones are disabled and the property is in short supply? With tears hanging down the jade chopsticks, he resigned from his official residence and walked into the teaching workshop with golden lotus steps. When looking into the mirror, one is filled with self-pity and the beauty of the country. For the first time, one learns to use makeup by leaning against the door. When spring comes, the rain and dew are as white as the sea, and Liu Lang is better than Ruan Lang in marrying her. It is said that since Chen Jingji met Feng Jinbao at Xi's restaurant, the two hooked up again, after 3 days without seeing him. Or, one day when Jingji had something to do, Jinbao asked Chen San'er to send him something or write a love letter to him. 1 time or 5 coins. Or 1 tael. From now on, I will provide him with firewood and rice during the day and pay for his house. He blushed when he returned to the temple. When any Taoist priest asked him where he came to have a drink, Jingji only said, have 3 drinks with the waiter at Mipu to relieve your hard work. His senior brother Jin Zongming tried his best to cover it up for him, and they went about the business with him in the evening. Needless to say, going back and forth day and night, most of the soft capital in the Taoist priest's bag was covered by the stolen money. One day, there is something to do. Liu of Sajia's shop is famous as a land tiger. He is the brother-in-law of Zhang Sheng and Shuifu Zhou Xiaobai. He runs a prostitution shop in Matu, relying on the strong to bully the weak, raising private debts, and working with everyone in the nest. If you use it as a prostitute, you will be asked for profit by adding 3 times. If there is one thing that is not given, the documents will be changed. The profit will be used as the basis, and the profit will be added to the profit. He is addicted to alcohol and commits murder, so no one dares to mess with him. He is the leader who beats fans, the leader who bullies drunkards. Seeing that Chen Jingji was a disciple of a Taoist priest in the Yanggong temple, a fair-faced boy, he thanked the 3 big men for occupying the pink-headed Zhengjin Bower. He was stunned to eat, and came over to thank him with a fist as big as a bull. Downstairs, he asked. Where is Jin Bao? The panicked Zi Sanlang hurriedly shouted. Uncle Liu. He is in the 2nd pavilion upstairs. Liu took a big step up the stairs. Jingji and Jinbo were drinking and having fun in the pavilion. The door was closed and the curtains were hung outside. Liu pulled down the curtain with his hands and shouted, Jin Bao, come out. Chen Jingji was so frightened that he didn't dare to breathe out. Then Liu kicked the door open with his foot, and Jin Bao had to come out to meet him and said, Uncle Liu, what do you say? Liu scolded, you thief, whore, you are missing 3 months of rent from me, yet you are hiding in this room. I won't go here. Jin Bao said with a smile, second uncle, go to your house, and I'll ask my mother to bring you the rent. Liu just punched his wife in the heart and snatched her head away from her. The edge was torn, blood flowed all over the floor, and he cursed. Thief, whore, you are still waiting for me to bring it. I want it now. Seeing Chen Jingji inside, he walked forward and lifted the table, smashing the plate into pieces. Then Jingji said, who are you? You are here to act wild. Liu scolded, I will fuck your Taoist priest Jia Jianyang. He plucked his hair with one hand, pinned it to the ground, and punched and kicked her numerous times. The people eating wine upstairs all opened their eyes when they saw it. The owner of the shop, Zi Sanchu, saw that Liu was drunk and did not dare to offend him. Later, when he saw that he was beaten badly, he went upstairs to persuade him and said, Uncle Liu, please calm down. He doesn't know your name, so he made a mistake and made a conflict. Don't be the same as him. If you look at the villain, let him go. Liu obeyed and tried his best to knock Jingji into a coma. Chapter 11. He asked the general to secure the place, tie a rope, and even the pink head to appear lock, and said, take it to the master's house early tomorrow morning. It turned out that the garrison ordered him to protect the place, patrol for thieves, and manage the river. I have taken Jingji here, but I don't know who the Taoist priest is in the temple. They only say that he has not returned to the late night at Mipu. But the next day, the local Baojia and Xun Kuaishou escorted Jingji and Jinbao and hired the headman to arrive at the house early in the morning to serve them. First, I handed the manuscript to the two stewards Chongzhen and Li and to read it. They said that there was a noise in Ershu Liu's place, a Taoist priest from the Yangon temple, Chen Zhangmai, and a prostitute, Zheng Jinbao. All the military prisoners asked him for money and said, "We are the executioners in the hall. We are a group of 12 people. It's up to you. You two serious people in charge should not underestimate them." Jingji said, "Beside me, you can do whatever you want. I did have some money, but it was all taken out by someone when Liu beat me at night. My clothes were torn to pieces. How can I get the money? I only had a silver hairpin on my head. Just take care of things." The prisoners came over with the hairpin and said to Zhongsheng and Lian, "If he doesn't give out any money, he will still make money by giving up this hairpin." Zhongsheng said, "You ask him to come closer and wait for me to interrogate him." All the troops suddenly rushed to him and knelt down, asking, "When did you become a disciple of Taoist priest Ren? What is your common name? I have never seen you." Jingji said the young man's common name is Chen Jingji. He was originally a son of a good family. He has been a Taoist priest for a short time. Zhongsheng said, "Since you are a Taoist priest, you should study the classics. Are you allowed to sleep in prostitutes, drink alcohol and make noise? What kind of small yeoman do you think the yeoman of my commander's office is? If you don't take the money, this hairpin can't make water muddy. What else do you want him to do?" The prisoner said, "When you return to the master's hall, put him first. Seeing that these bad Taoist priests are stingy, I can only allow you to ask for money and food from donors in vain. Don't say that you are an official. You just when he comes to have a drink and a banquet. He also brings a square sweat towel to wipe his mouth. When the execution begins, he will beat the guy even harder." Called Zhang Jinbo up again. Wang Ba followed the Zheng family and sent 3 or 4 taels of silver round. Zhongsheng said, "You are a prostitute, but you are just getting some food and clothing to make a living. It's not a big deal. It depends on the master's mood and anger. And it only takes 1 or 2 hooks if you like it. If you like it, you just let it out and you don't know." After a while, I saw the cloud board ringing inside. The garrison was raised to the hall, and the officers and soldiers on both sides were lined up in prisons, which was very neat. But see, Feiluo covers the wall and purple ribbon surrounds the table. The forehead of the hall is hung with silk flowers, and the 4 curtains are hung with emeralds. The surveyor is upright, and the 4 lines of the royal system are engraved on the precept stone. The person is honest and upright, and to command flags are placed next to the antlers. The military prison is heavy and the officers are majestic, holding a big stick and giving instructions before setting up the steps. He held the document hall and listened to the distribution. Although he was a handsome minister all the way, he turned out to be full of gods. At that time, it was no coincidence that friends who had been enemies for 500 kalpas gathered together, and the marriage seemed to be a match. Chumai had given birth to a son, Xiaoyanai, in August last year. Now he is half a year old. His appearance is like a crown of jade, and his lips are as if painted with vermilion. Guarding and joy are like treasures on the table, and love is like a priceless treasure. Not long after the eldest grandma passed away, the guard registered Chunmai and made her his wife. I lived in 5 main houses, bought to foster mothers and nanny brothers. One was Yutong and the other was Jingui. 2 little maids were serving. One was Kuihua and the other was Orchid. And there were 2 beloved ones who played and sang. My sisters are both 16 or 17 years old. One is hiding and the other is Yugui. They are all serving in Chunmei's room. The second mother-in-law of Sun kept a maid in her room, named He Huer. Every time in the small Yemen, whenever Zhongsheng hugged him and played outside, and when the guards came to the hall, he would watch from the side. On that day, the garrison chief sat down in the hall, put up notices and went out, and people came in from various places. As soon as possible, Chen Jingji and the prostitute Zheng Jinbao were called. After reading the form, the guard said, "You are a Taoist priest, but you don't abide by the rules. You stay with prostitutes and drink alcohol, harass the place, and you are doing bad things. Take them off left and right, beat them with 20 sticks, and chase the ultimatum to return to secular life." That prostitute Zheng, after 1 blow and 50 blows, he was ordered to return to the hospital for duty. The military prisons on both sides moved forward. And then they pulled Jingji over, spread out his clothes, tied them up with ropes, and turned the sticks. When the two sides said they were going to beat him, they could do it in an instant. To make trouble, Zhang Sheng was holding Xiao Yanai and standing on the platform to watch. When Xiao Yanai saw Jingji beating him, he couldn't stop him in his arms and rushed for Jingji to hug him. Zhang Sheng was afraid that the guards would see him and hurriedly came over. The little yeoman also burst into tears and cried until she came to Chen Mai in the back. Chen Mai asked, "Why is he crying?" Zhang Sheng said, "When the master was distributing things in the hall, he beat Taoist Chen of Yangon Temple, and he rushed to hold him. When the little one came down, he cried." When Chen Mai heard that the surname was Chen, she couldn't help but move her lotus steps lightly, put on her xiang skirt, and walked behind the soft screen to look at her. The man who beat him sounded like Brother Chen. Why did he become a monk? Taoist priest? He called Zhang Sheng and asked him, "Who is this person?" Zhang Sheng said, "I asked him about this Taoist priest, and he said his common name is Chen Jingji." Chen Mai said to herself, "It's him." At the same time, he asked Zhang Sheng, "Please come here, your master." In the guard hall, Jingji was beaten with 10 sticks, and he was still singing. Suddenly, he heard an invitation from the lady behind him, and he was given a stick by the prisoner and stayed in the pavilion, beat, and walked down the hall. Chen Mai said, "The Taoist priest you beat is my aunt's cousin. For the slave's sake, let him be spared." The guard said, "Madam, why didn't you tell me earlier that I have beaten him 10 times? What can I do?" He came out and handed the prisoners to the prisoners. "Let them all go with me." The singer then returned to the hospital. The guard quietly said to Zhang Sheng, "Ask the Taoist priest to come back and stay away. I asked your grandma and asked him to meet you." Chen Mai was just waiting for Zhang Sheng to invite him to the back hall to meet him, and suddenly thought for a moment. Then he told Zhang Sheng, "Just tell that man to go, and I will call him later." Du did not pursue him. Chen Jingji was beaten with 10 sticks, left the garrison mansion, and rushed to Yingong Temple. I don't want any Taoist priest to hear anyone say, "Your disciple Chen Zhangmai was keeping the singer Zheng Jinbaoer in a big restaurant. He offended Lior, the tiger in the Sajia store, and beat him to death. He even tied up his wife and took her to the garrison mansion. Go, if you have done something wrong, I will send you to the military prison to interrogate you and return the ultimatum to the official." When the Taoist heard this, he was frightened because he was old and fat. There were not many soft things. He breathed heavily, phlegm welled up in his heart, and he collapsed to the ground. All the disciples hurried forward to help him and asked the doctor to come and give him medicine to make him unconscious. In the middle of the night, he breathed his last and died. He died at the age of 63. The next day, when Chen Jingji arrived, his neighbors said, "You still dared to go to the temple? Your master was so angry that he died at midnight last night because of what you did." After hearing this, Jingji bluffed he was as busy as a bereaved dog and as anxious as a fish that slipped through the net. Returning to King County. Exactly, it is difficult to argue with the deer following Zheng, and the butterfly transforming into Zhuangzhou is unknown. The words are divided into 2 parts. However, Chen Mai asked Zhang Sheng to call Jingji and leave, then walked back to the room, took off her crown, took off her embroidered clothes, fell on the bed, felt her heart and quilt, and screamed in pain. The whole house was frightened. Sun Erniang, the servant, came and asked, "Grandma is fine. Why can't she get better?" Chen Mai said, "You can go and leave me alone." The guard who was behind came back from the hall and saw him lying on the bed and calling out, also panicked. She held his hand and asked, "What's on your mind?" Without saying a word, he asked again, "Who provoked you here?" Without saying a word, the guard said, "Aren't you upset because I just hit your brother?" He didn't respond. The defense was helpless. They went outside and attacked Zhang Sheng and Lian. "You knew he was your grandma's brother. Why didn't you tell me earlier? But you made me beat him 10 times, which offended your grandma. I feel uncomfortable. I once told you to keep him and ask your grandma to meet you. Why did you let him go?" Zhang Sheng said, "Young man Zhang told grandma, and she said just teach him to go and let him go." As he walked into the room, he cried and begged Chen Mai, "I hope grandma can say something in front of me, otherwise I will blame you." Chunmai opened her starry eyes, raised her eyebrows, called the guard and said, I don't have a good heart. What can I do to them? That guy doesn't keep his duty and works as a Taoist priest outside. I'll wait for him for a while. I will admit him slowly. This defense will not offend Zhongsheng and Lian. When the guard saw that he just called out, he asked Zhongsheng to ask the medical officer to check his pulse and said, Laoan is infected with the disease of 6 desires and 7 emotions, and he is very angry in his heart. He refused to take the medicine after he was asked for it, so he let it go. Cold, the girl didn't dare to speak forward, so she asked the guards to watch her take the medicine. She only took a sip and stopped taking it. The guard went out, and the maid Yugui took the medicine and said, Please take the medicine, Grandma. Chunmai took it and splashed it on her face, cursing, You thief slave, why are you just pouring this bitter water on me? What's in my belly? Teach him to kneel in front of him. Sun Erniang came over and asked, What's wrong with Gui Gui? Grandma taught him to kneel. Haiting said, Grandma took medicine with her because he took it. Grandma said, What's in my stomach? Give me this medicine. Teach him to kneel down. Sun Erniang said, Grandma, you didn't eat anything today. He doesn't know about this laurel. For my sake, I'll spare him this. You go to the kitchen and cook some porridge to eat with your grandma. Chunmai then put the laurel up. Haiting went to the kitchen, carefully cooked a small pot of thick rice porridge, ordered for dishes of side dishes, put them in pots, and brought them to the room while they were hot. Chunmai was lying on the bed, sleeping with her face facing inward. She didn't dare to scream. She waited until he turned around and then asked him, I have porridge here. Please treat Grandma to some porridge. Chunmai closed her eyes and said nothing. Haiting shouted again, The porridge is cold. Please get up and eat porridge. Sun Erniang said from the side, Grandma, you haven't eaten anything in the past half day. This time you feel better. Please get up and eat something. Yi Galuzi picked it up, taught Nazi to take the lamp, took the porridge in her hand, took a sip, and pushed it to the ground. I hadn't broken the guy into pieces long ago and had my breasts catch it. Then he shouted loudly and said to Sun Erniang, You asked me to get up to eat porridge for no reason. Look at the good porridge cooked by the thieves. I'm not confinement. Why don't you make this noodle soup and eat it with me? You and I will slap this slave in the face for times. At that moment, Haiting was really slapped in the face for times. Sun Erniang said, Grandma, if you don't eat porridge, what do you eat? But you are not hungry. Chunmai said, You teach me to eat, but I am blocked in my heart and can't eat. After a long time, she called Xiao Xiao. The maid Lan Huier came and said to her, I want to eat some chicken nugget soup. Go to the kitchen and teach the slut slave to wash his hands and make a bowl of good chicken nugget soup for me to eat. Teach him to put more chicken nib soup. I will eat some sour and spicy bamboo shoots. Sun Erniang said, Grandma will give it to him and teach Zui how to make it. The orchid didn't dare to neglect, so she walked to the kitchen and said to Zui, Grandma will teach you how to make chicken tip soup. Make it quickly and wait for it to be eaten. It turns out that the chicken tip soup is made from the tips of chick breasts and wings, made into soup. While Zui was washing her hands and picking off her nails, she slaughtered 2 chickens, brushed them clean, picked out the wing tips, chopped them into shreds with a sharp knife, added peppers, chopped green onions, coriander, pickled bamboo shoots, oily sauce, etc., and uncovered them. Make a clear soup. 2 pots were filled with red paint on a plate. It was hot and the orchids were brought to the room. Chunmai looked at it under the lamp, took a sip, and screamed and cursed. Tell that slut slave, what kind of soup are you making? The essence is light and a little tasteless. You just teach me to eat, and you don't call me for nothing. Angry, the panicked Lan Hua hurriedly walked to the kitchen and said to Zui, Grandma thinks the soup is too bland, so I don't want to scold her. Zui said nothing, swallowed her anger, washed the pot again, and made another bowl. I added more chili pepper and it was fragrant. I taught Orchid to bring it into the room. Chunmai thought it was too salty again, so she picked it up and shined it on the ground and just splashed it. But the orchid ducked quickly and almost got splashed all over her body. He scolded, Go ahead and tell that slave. If he is not angry, he will eat it with me. This is not a good thing. Let him ask for explanation. When Zui heard this, she was totally incompatible. So she whispered, When did my sister get so old? Ji hugged someone. She didn't want Lan Hue to come back to the room, so she told Chen Mai. Chen Mai refused to listen. After hearing this, her willow eyebrows straightened up. Her starry eyes widened. She gritted her silver teeth. Her face turned red, and she shouted, "Come with me to pick that horse slave." After a while, he sent 3 or 4 wet nurses and maids to pull Zui into the room. Chen Mai angrily grabbed his hair with one hand, stamped the crown on his head, and cursed. "Horse slave, how did you say when you were so big? Your Simon King family didn't promote me to be this big. I bought it. You are here to serve me, but you are not angry. I teach you how to make soup, which is either light or bitter, but you tell me when I will become so old and hug me. What is the use of you?" On the one hand, he asked the guards to come and Cake Sui went out and knelt in the courtyard. The generals Zhang Sheng and Lian were asked to strip off their clothes and beat them with 30 big sticks. Family members on both sides lit up bright lanterns, and Zhang Sheng and Li, and each held big sticks to wait on them. That Zui just refused to take off her clothes. The guard was probably angry with him and did not dare to speak in front of him. Sun Er Niang repeatedly advised from the side, "Just beat him as much as Grandma pays, so as not to take off his clothes. Don't argue with the servants and take off his clothes. It will not look good on his face. I just hope Grandma will show her noble hand and let him take off his clothes. His is gone." Chen Mai refused and insisted on beating him on his clothes, saying, "If you stop me, I'll kill the child first, and then I'll just hang him with a rope." So he stopped fighting and fell to the ground straight up, unconscious. The guard was so frightened that he quickly helped her up and said, "Just hit her as you wish. I won't make you angry." Then he dragged Sun Zui to the ground, took off her clothes, and beat her with 30 sticks until her skin and flesh were torn. On the one hand, he asked the prisoner to call Mrs. Zhu in the middle of the night, and immediately took her out to sell her. Chen Mai called Mrs. Zhu behind her back and paid. "I only need 8 taels of silver to sell this slave to a prostitute. You can transfer it as much as you like. I don't care about you. If you sell it somewhere else, I'll find out. Come out and don't want to see me." Sister-in-law Zhu said, "Where do I live my life? But I don't follow your advice." He brought Zui home that night. Zui was so sad that she cried until dawn. Sister-in-law Zhu then advised, "Don't cry. It's also your bad luck. Enemies bumped into each other. I just saw you coming. I just hate that you have some old grudges with him and frustrated you. Even I can't make the decision. Son, when you see that he has a child, you will obey him in everything. As the saying goes, he has become a warehouse official, so you can't stop crying." Zui shed her tears and thanked Sister Zhu. "I just hope that I will find a good head sooner or later. I will only have food to eat." Sister-in-law Zhu said, "He paid tens of millions of dollars just to teach me to send you to a prostitute. When I raise children, I also have to follow the laws of heaven. Wait for me to take care of you. You can find a single wife or marry into a small business manager's family so that you can support her. Thank you very much, Zui." 2 days later, Mrs. Zhu saw a neighbor, Zhang Ma, who opened a shop, coming up and calling, "Mother Zhu, what kind of lady do you have in the back room? Why are you crying so sadly?" Aunt Zhu said, "Mama Zhang, please come in and sit down," said, "This is this lady. He comes from a big family. Because he can't get along with the eldest lady, he sent him out to get married here. He would rather be a single husband and a single wife to avoid anger." Mother Zhang said, "There is a cotton flower seller from Shandong, surnamed Pan, ranked 5th, 37 years old, and has several carts of flowers and fruits. He often lives in the old man's house. The day before yesterday, he said that his mother was sick, and she was in her 70s. My wife has been dead for half a year, and no one has been waiting for her. It is no coincidence that she has arranged for him to be married. I think this lady is quite old, so she should marry him." Sister-in-law Zhu said, "To tell you the truth, this lady comes from a rich family. She can make everything regardless of thickness. Needless to say, she also makes good soup. She is only 35 years old. I only have 30 taels of silver, which is easy to keep. Let's go with him." Mother Zhang asked, "Do you have a cage?" Sister-in-law Zhu said, "He only has clothes and hairpins, but he doesn't have a cage." Mother Zhang said, "If that's the case, I'll go back and tell that person. Tell him to come and take a look at his own home." After that, he had tea and sat back. Wang Si told the man, and after dinner the next day, he brought the man to see him. As soon as he saw Zue's good looks and young age, he paid back 25 taels in one go, plus 1 tael of matchmaking money with Mrs. Zhu. Sister-in-law Zhu did not argue, so she exchanged the money and wrote the documents. The evening passed, and I got in the car and got up the next day. Sister-in-law Zhu had someone change the documents and exchanged only 8 taels of silver for the money and handed it over to the government. Mai took it away and said she would sell it to a prostitute. The man married Zui and stayed at Zhang's mother's house for one night. On the next day, at 5 o'clock, he thanked Zhang's mother, said goodbye, got in the car, and went straight to lynching. This is the weather in June. The days are long, and the sun is just west of Matu. When it comes to Sajiadian, there are hundreds of houses there, and they all play the song of nests from far away. As soon as Zui was led into a door, there was half a room. Inside, there was a woman in her 50s or 60s sitting on the king, and an old girl in her 17th year, a pile of soft silk clothes, playing the peeper on the edge of the king. Zui cried out in pain when she saw it. And then she realized that the man Pan Wu was a sailor, by him to make powderhead. He was named Yer. This little girl's name is Jenner. She goes out with a gong every day, receives guests in restaurants and sings, making a living on this road. When Pan Wu came in, he beat Zui first and gave him 2 bowls of rice. He taught him how to play instruments and sing. If he couldn't learn how to play, he beat Zui again. He was beaten until his body was bruised and bruised. After leading dower, he put on good clothes and makeup, stood in front of the door, leaned against the door and smiled, with mocking eyes. Exactly, the traces are worthy of the eyes of the people in the palace, and the peonies are painted without rouge. There is poetry to prove it. There is no end of the road and there is no choice. If you go south or north, you will have a rest. Wherever the colorful clouds dispersed one night, my dream followed the bright moon to the brothel. This Sue's stay in Sajiadian was just a coincidence. One day, Chongzhen was sent by the guards to buy dozens of stones of distiller's yeast from the river and make wine in his house. Liu, who was sitting in the Sajia restaurant, saw his brother-in-law coming and quickly cleaned the restaurant, ranged wine and food cups and plates in the upper pavilion, and invited Chongzhen to sit on it and drink. The doctor of wine sifted the wine and asked, "Second uncle, can you ask those singers to come up and hand over the wine?" Liu paid, called the Wang family's elder sister, the Zhao family's Zhaoer, the Pan family's Jenner, and the Pan family's Yuer to come up and serve them. Uncle Zhang, Dr. Zhu Bauer promised and went downstairs. Not long after, only laughter was heard by the hootie. For singers, dressed like flowers, all wearing light gauze and soft silk clothes, came up the stairs, looked up and bowed 4 times, and stood beside them. Chongzhen suddenly opened his eyes and looked around. There was a pink head inside, and he suddenly acted strangely. Go to the Lady Zui who was sent from the Prime Minister's house. How did he do this? Zui also glanced and saw that it was Chongzhen. No one said anything. Chongzhen then asked Liu, "Whose family does that Fanta belong to?" Liu said, "To be honest with my brother-in-law. He is Yuer and Jenner from Pan Wu. This is Sister Wang, and the other is Zhao Jia." Chongzhen said, "This Panjia Yuer looks familiar to me." He called him closer and asked him quietly, "Aren't you Miss Snow? How did you get born here?" When Zui heard him ask, she burst into tears, then said, "It's hard to describe in one sentence. So and so. Say it again." Sister-in-law Zhu deceived me into selling me for 25 taels of silver, and I was sold here to sing at banquets and receive guests. Zhang Shangping had always been fond of him when he saw his good life. Zui persuaded her to drink wine diligently in front of the banquet, and the 2 of them agreed to enter Hong Kong. Zui and Jenner couldn't help but take the pipa, sing a song, and drink with Chongzhen. After singing, they exchanged cups with each other, leaned against the green and red, and when the wine was strong, they often said, "Who is not obsessed with 3 things when it comes to wealth? Pink, and wine in the singing house?" Chongzhen fell in love with Zui. We stayed in the pavilion for 2 nights and slept together. This Zui has the wind and moon on her pillow, the mountain alliance beside her ears, and she and Zhongsheng try their best to wander around, like fish in water. It is difficult to describe in every possible way. When he got up the next day, he washed his head and face, and Liu arranged for wine and food to be served early, and he and his brother-in-law held their heads together. A big plate and a big bowl, a delicious meal, packed up the luggage, fed the head and mouth, loaded with rice koji, accompanied by others. Before going out, he gave Zui 3 taels of silver and gave it to Liu. Hao Sheng takes good care of him. Don't let others bully him. From then on, Zhongsheng came to Hexia and met Zui at Sajietian. After walking back and forth, Pan was given 5 or so taels of silver a month, and he was wrapped up and not allowed to pick up anyone. Liu Erzi wanted to please his brother-in-law, so he didn't even ask him for rent. After scraping the nests, they gave Zhongsheng money and Zui's firewood and rice. There is poetry to prove it. Unexpectedly, at that time, he indulged his intentions, was greedy and relied on power to deceive his heart. If misfortune is not found, everyone brings it to himself. If sex is not charming, everyone will be led astray.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.